During his 2 terms as mayor of Ontario's capital city from 2003 to 2010, David Miller made transit a top planning priority, including the ambitious Transit City Plan that, among other things, proposed 7 new light rapid transit lines. However, when the current premier's brother, Rob Ford, became mayor of Toronto, subways took over top billing. And now, with the upload of the TTC's subways on the provincial government's agenda, David Miller has gone public with a fairly robust reaction to that vision. He is currently Director of International Diplomacy for the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, and he joins us now for more. Nice to have you back in that chair.
Pleasure to be here, Steve. Thank you.
I would just like to read something, a little excerpt of something you had in Now Magazine, which is one of those local Toronto magazines. You had this up recently. Sheldon, thank you. No doubt about it, provincial interference in Toronto transit has a history of being wrong. Ford, with his penchant for using government to benefit friends and clients, can only make it worse. We shouldn't be letting the province anywhere near Toronto's transit system. It's owned by the people of Toronto and needs to be planned and run in their interest by the people they elect, not by the province, and certainly not by this premier. I found this very interesting because we have tried to get you on this program numerous times since your political career was over, and you have often decided you'd rather not take a public position on things and politely declined our invitations. Not this time. Why this issue?
First of all, I'm glad I politely declined and not impolitely.
Always politely.
Well, transit's the heartblood of any city, particularly a large city. If you don't have an excellent rapid transit system, the city's not going to succeed from a transportation perspective. It's not going to succeed from an economic perspective, an environmental perspective, and also a social inclusion perspective, because a good transit system benefits everybody in the city, not just some people. And I think this issue is critical to the future of Toronto. I live here, I've raised my family here, my children live here. You know, I certainly want to see Toronto succeed. I also think I have a unique vantage point. Not only was I the mayor, but I've served on the boards of GO Transit, Metrolinx, the Toronto Transit Commission, and the long-forgotten Greater Toronto Services Board, which the previous government established to oversee transit planning in the region. And so I've been privileged to actually understand what's going on, understand what planning means, what's possible and what isn't. And from that perspective, I think I've really got a duty to speak up.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. The premier used to be at City Hall. He was a Toronto City Councillor. His brother was the mayor. He is a Toronto MPP and now heads the Ontario government with a seat in the capital city. Could he not make the argument that he has a pretty good understanding of what this city needs as well?
Well, not factually, because he clearly doesn't from the policies he's taken and the positions he's said. But it's not just about the premier, although this premier, from my perspective, would be disastrous for transit in Toronto. It's an institutional thing. The City of Toronto, on behalf of the people of Toronto, should be planning the transit future of this city. It should be up to the people of Toronto, through the people they elect, to choose. You know, I said in the article you quoted from, it should be up to the people on living along Kingston Road to elect people to plan their transit, not the people of Kingston. And there's an institutional sense of what's right from a democratic perspective. Secondly, it's a really critical function of the city. All local governments are responsible for planning for the future and for land use planning. If you can't plan your transportation network, and I would argue operate and run it as well, if you can't do that, you can't properly plan from a land use perspective. Those functions go together. So both from a democratic perspective and from an institutional perspective, this is a job for the City of Toronto, not a job for the province.
Their argument would be that issues no longer stop at the Don River, the Humber River, and Steeles Avenue. Even in your term as mayor, there were transit extensions built that went beyond the 416, that went into the outlying regions of Toronto, and therefore it makes more sense today to take a regional as opposed to just city approach.
Well, of course, there's some regional links, and you know, when we built the subway to York University and up to Vaughan, I like to call it the subway to York University and beyond, because most of the traffic is up to York. There's a regional approach there and a regional link, but you have to start with the concept of what's going to work in the core in the city. So when Metrolinx, for example, made its plan called Big Move, was a regional plan. it got the core right. And what did it do for the core? It accepted the City of Toronto's proposal, which was then the Transit City Plan. And that's really important to understand. If you don't get the transportation right for the core, for the 3 million people that live in Toronto, you're not going to have a regional network that works.
So what's so bad about what they've got in mind for the core?
Well, what's bad is the province taking over the responsibility means A, democratically, B, institutionally, it's not being decided on the right basis, and the results will follow that. And we've seen that in the past. The decisions for people, for example, people crossing the border have predominated in the provincial mind because that's how they think. But they're not nearly the majority. The vast majority of people who take the Toronto Transit Commission commute within Toronto. It's not a cross-regional issue. It's about getting around within the city. And what's the most important thing to get around within the city? You need a network. And the proposals on the table and the kind of proposals the province is talking about are nothing to do with building a network within the city. You can use different technologies to accomplish that network. Our proposal, which is still under construction, the Eglinton Crosstown, just up here, it's north of your studio, as part of Transit City, used light rail because it's affordable, economical, and meets the transit needs of Torontonians. Some parts of the city you need subways. Parts of the 905, you need busways, and that's what's being built there. But if you don't get the city right, nothing's going to work in the region. And what the province is proposing is essentially turning that on its head. Meet the regional needs first, and that will cause really significant problems within the City of Toronto. I'll give you one example. There's a proposal to extend the Yonge subway north to Richmond Hill and beyond. What that will mean from a practical perspective is it will be almost impossible for people within the City of Toronto to get on the subway, certainly not to have a seat. It also means you have to build a line which is called the Downtown Relief Line to relieve the congestion at Yonge and Bloor.
Well, the Minister of Transportation was just in that chair, and he said we can do both of these things at the same time, but the Yonge Street Relief Line is the top priority.
Well, he may say that. There's no evidence of that in terms of budgets. Secondly, if you're building this from a City of Toronto perspective, to serve the needs of the vast majority of people who actually need transit, you would build the relief line and you would be planning a network within the city. You also would be planning to meet regional needs by the appropriate technologies there. And if people want to come from Richmond Hill to downtown Toronto, as opposed to Richmond Hill or Richmond Hill to Yonge and Finch, you should be using heavy rail, GO Transit. Subways don't serve that purpose well at all. They're highly expensive and they're inefficient to use for long distance because they have lots of stops. You want a train that has a few stops. And there's a line there now that's underutilized, which could be used for very low cost compared to subways. The other point here, Steve, is there isn't an infinite amount of money. So if we're going to meet the transit needs, you need to use that money efficiently. So if you start with a network using the right kind of technologies for the right place, and then build on that regionally, you can get really great results. If you come to the table, as the province is doing, saying we've got to have a subway here and here, you won't build that network. You won't meet the regional needs or even the needs within the City of Toronto. You'll possibly have a couple of subway lines, and that's it. And you won't have met the transportation needs of either group. It's destined to be a failure for both.
Well, the Markham Mayor, Frank Scarpitti, was on this program recently, and he talked about this tension between what goes first, the relief line or the Yonge Street extension. Let's play a clip of what he had to say, then we'll come back and chat. Sheldon, if you would.
We've never said don't build the downtown relief line. We've never said that the downtown relief line shouldn't open prior to the Yonge subway. It can open up 12 hours before, 12 days before, or 12 months before. I don't really care. But both these projects should be funded. Both these projects need to happen to improve the network that is out there servicing all of the GTA.
He uses your language even about building a network. Is he right?
He's right on building a network, but let's deal with some reality here and look at the transit plans that have been around in Toronto since Bill Davis's time.
40 years back now.
Yeah, there's GO, Advanced Light Rail Transit. There's a whole range of plans that have been on the books since the 70s. First of all, they all had a network with similar lines. Secondly, Those that promised subways, including the ones promised by David Peterson and Bob Ray, were never built. Why not? There isn't enough money. This is a government that's cut services to autistic children, that has cut or doubled class sizes, massively cut funding for education. The idea that there's tens of billions of dollars to build a subway up Yonge Street, to build a downtown relief line, and to build a one-stop subway extension in Scarborough, and build a network.
Actually, three-stop subway now. They've talked about a three-stop subway.
Yes, they've talked about. Let's see. And by the way, Steve, my prediction, having watched this happen since the 1970s.
You think it's never going to happen?
It'll never happen. There'll be studies and announcements, but there won't be building. Why not? Because there isn't 20 or 30 billion dollars to build these subways. There simply isn't. And there definitely will not be a network within Toronto, which is the number one thing that is needed along with the downtown relief line. There won't be, because there isn't the money. So it doesn't matter what the mayor says, Mayor Scarpetti says, about, oh yes, let's have this and this. If there isn't the money, you've got to make some choices. And the choices that need to be made are choices that should give rapid transit to the most people who need it, where they need it, particularly low-income neighborhoods who today are stuck on the bus. And what'll happen is possibly one of these will be built like the Shepherd line was, 20 years ago. There was supposed to be a whole network. We built half a line. That's half of what's supposed to be built.
And no one uses it.
Well, the usage is way below what it might be. Yeah. And my concern is that's what's going to happen again. We'll build, Councillor Howard Moscow used to call it the Shepherd Stubway, right? We'll build a stubway, and for another generation, Toronto will be left without the transit network that is needed, particularly in low-income neighborhoods. That's what's the most likely thing to happen. You know, history rhymes. It doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's the most likely thing to happen. Doesn't matter what Mayor Scarpetti says. If there isn't $20 billion, you're not going to have the downtown relief line and the Yonge subway, regardless of whether it's right or not. And there isn't $20 billion available to build that.
There might not be $20 billion, but Jeff Urick, again, the Minister of Transportation, said he didn't want to scoop Vic Fideli, the Treasurer, but he said, you watch this next Ontario budget coming out the 11th of April, there will be hundreds of millions of dollars heretofore unexpected that will go towards building up this infrastructure in Toronto. He was very confident that we would love it.
Hundreds of millions of dollars won't build subways. That'll do some studies and engineering studies. And we know the history of this government, this premier, and the previous Conservatives government is actually cancelling transit projects. Eglinton, there's supposed to be a subway. Bob Ray had it started. Metro, the regional government in Toronto, was building it, was forced to close it down and spend $100 million filling in the hole.
Yep.
Right? Yep. And the Shepherd LRT, same thing, and actually happened to cost $100 million to shut it down, and that was Mr. Ford. So yes, perhaps they'll do some studies. They won't have $20 or $30 billion in this budget to build transit. It's not possible in this fiscal climate or any.
How often does it irritate you to think about the plan that you got passed through Toronto City Council, which if the shovels had gone in the ground when you wanted them to, an LRT would be up kind of right now, pretty close to right now, serving residents in Scarborough, as opposed to these plans for subways, one-stop, three-stop, $3 billion, $4.5 billion, which, as you suggest, may never be built. How often do you think about that?
A fair bit.
I figured you might.
One of the reasons I spoke up, and Eglinton is going as part of the plan. There's supposed to be a line along Finch. We'll see. Shepherd was under construction and cancelled, as we discussed. I think the sad thing is for the residents of Scarborough, because what's going to happen if that subway stop is built? People who have rapid transit today, their stops are going to close. They don't realize it, but like Lawrence East is going to close. That stop will close. People who today have access to rapid transit are going to be put back on the bus.
You mean on the Scarborough RT?
Yes.
Okay.
The Scarborough RT stops will close. And what would have happened was the Shepherd LRT would have joined in, the Eglinton LRT would have joined in, and there's a third one to be built up to UT Scarborough. We called it Scarborough Malvern, the name's changed. You have those three lines, and there's rapid transit within Scarborough that serves the needs of residents of Scarborough, not just to get downtown, but to get around Scarborough. They would have benefited tremendously, particularly people in some low-income neighborhoods in Scarborough. I feel very sad for them. And I think when people who today have rapid transit are told to get back on the bus, they're going to be furious. I hope there's some elected officials that stand up for them and start fighting for them.
A couple of minutes left. Let me see if I can get two more things on the table here. There's actually nothing the city can do about this, right? The province has all the cards here. The province will make the ultimate decision. There are negotiations going on. You're trying to make the case, but the fact is there's nothing you can do about this. Isn't that right?
Well, I wouldn't say that
Nothing
at all.
legally.
We still live in a democracy. And I think the more facts get out, the more people will realize how egregious the provincial proposal is, how short-sighted it is, and how little thought has gone into it. Because even if you accept that those lines will be built, which they won't, they still don't serve the transit needs of Toronto or of the region. And the more people fight, the more possibility, even with this government, that you can get them to back down. And given that they're going to be doing studies, not building, I think there's lots of opportunity to stop these projects, these short-sighted ones, these too expensive ones, and build the right projects with the right technologies to serve far more people.
You were the 63rd mayor of Toronto?
Well, I was the second of the amalgamated city of Toronto.
Okay.
That's the number I know
That's the way you
best.
look. Okay, well, let me go with my old math here. You were number 63 if you start in 1838. 1838, is that when it started? How's the 65th mayor doing at all this? That's the current guy.
Well, John's got a different approach than I do. I think with Mr. Ford, you need to stand up to him. His behavior is like that of lots of bullies, and you know how to treat bullies in schoolyards. You stand up to them. And I think that's what you need to do here. And on this particular issue, because of its importance to the city government and to the people of the city of Toronto, I really think you got to fight.
He thinks a more cooperative approach is what's needed, obviously.
Well, people tried to cooperate with Mr. Ford around the election for the city. That didn't work. I don't see that as a strategy, but I'm not going to second guess John. I think John's got to choose his strategy. For me, I think this is a provincial government you fight, and on this issue in particular, you have to fight tooth and nail because it's so critical to the people of Toronto to get this right.
That's former Toronto Mayor David Miller. He's either the second or the 63rd, whichever new math you want to use. We thank you for coming into TVO tonight.
Steve, thanks for having me on.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.